Hi, I'm Eric Kelly from KellyPlanet.com. This is a close look at Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 13, The Masterpiece Society.
The Enterprise has been diverted to the Moab sector to track a stellar core fragment of a disintegrated neutron star. Our science teams have been asked to monitor the planetary disruptions it may cause.
I don't know a whole lot about stellar core fragments, but neutron stars are super dense, so gravity problems might be a thing. Riker says the core fragment is going to pass Moab 4 in 6 days, so, well, there are people down there, and they didn't know that. Data says there are humans living in a biodome on the southern continent. Worf says they aren't answering hails, and no starships have gone missing in the area, so how the heck did they get there? Geordi says he's picking up an old-school EM band emission, so that's like AM radio or VHF, and they have to adjust their dial.
Enterprise, I am Aaron Connor. I don't want to be rude, Captain, but we don't wish to interact with outsiders. I'm only responding because of your warning.
That Connor guy is played by John Snyder. We saw him before as the Romulan Baccara on Galorndon Core with Geordi. Picard says, well, you might want to talk to us. You only have 6 days. But Connor says, yeah, we know that. It'll be fine. You might notice Ron Canada back there, and we'll get to him in a bit. Data says, hey, guy, I'm sure your biodome thing is great, but this core fragment will tear it apart. And Picard says, we must evacuate you. But Connor says, yeah, we can't do that. The dome is sealed. No matter, we can just beam you up here. And he's like, really? That sounds pretty cool.
May we arrange for your transport?
No, I must remain here. But under the circumstances, I will permit a small delegation from your ship inside the biosphere.
Okay, it's away team time, and that place looks nasty. There's Ron Canada again, and we see him a bunch of times on Trek. He plays Martin Benbeck, and he thinks this away team plan is a bad idea. But hey, this beaming stuff is awesome. We find out that their whole society is engineered, I assume genetically, and leaving the dome would ruin that somehow. But this has been going on for 8 generations. Ron Canada says they've evolved beyond human flaws, and he is racist against Geordi because he's blind.
No one in this society would be blind, for example. No offense intended.
I can see you just fine, sir.
Yes, well, my point was just
Thank you, Martin.
Okay, so these guys are a bunch of smug jerks. I got it. Ron, not from Canada, is like, you guys are messing up our society already. And Connor says, well, if we all die, that won't really matter, will it? The way these guys work is everyone is genetically predisposed to do whatever society requires of them, so engineers are engineers, and poets are poets, and nobody feels, lost. That is Day Young, and we'll see her again several times, too. Her character is Hannah Bates, and she's a physicist because her genes say so. Riker beams back to the ship, and Deanna stays with Connor because, oh no, she has a crush on him. And as we've seen in the Pepperoni Ral episode, her taste in men can be kind of questionable.
Well, I certainly wouldn't wish to throw off your entire balance.
Too late. Damage is done.
So they're just talking. We find out that their society is designed to handle accidents and stuff, so basically nothing really happens that they're not prepared for, but skip. Hannah and Geordi are exchanging tech porn, and her idea is to use the Enterprise to move the core fragment. That seems unlikely, but okay. She has a plan.
A multi-phase tractor beam.
When we first spotted the fragment approaching, I came up with the idea. But we can't generate the kind of energy we would need. You can.
For this to even have a shot, Hannah would need to be on the ship, and of course Ron Canada is absolutely not. I guess he'd rather just stay there and die. He says, oh, beaming her around might ruin her DNA, and Geordi says, no way, we've been doing this for over a century, and yeah, way more. Bill Cobb was beaming people since Archer's Day, although that didn't really work out so well.
Commander LaForge and Hannah Bates have spent 3 days trying to find a way to adjust the path of the core fragment. If they do not succeed in the next 48 hours, we will need to begin evacuation.
I was just thinking there's got to be at least thousands of people down there, and the Enterprise D is big, but I don't know, I guess they could pack in the hallways or something. Picard is not a fan of genetic engineering because he's quite familiar with eugenics wars and Khan and all that.
I wouldn't want to live my life knowing that my future was written. My boundaries had been already set. Would you?
I don't know. I doubt it.
Picard says since Troy wants to be Connor's girlfriend, it's up to her to convince him that if they don't evacuate, all these goofballs are going to die. Down in engineering, Geordi and Hannah are doing stuff, and he takes his visor off, and she thinks that's pretty remarkable. He says, well, I guess if I was born on your planet, well, I wouldn't have been. And she says, yeah, no one should have to suffer a life with disability. And he's like, yeah, well, who gave them the right to decide if I should live? Right. He's explaining how his visor works, and that gives him an idea.
Wait just a minute. We should be able to send a high-energy pulse through the tractor system. If it's short enough, it shouldn't overload the emitters. The technology is right here.
It's pretty ironic what could save her people comes from a blind man that would have never existed in that society. Anyway, right again. Oh my, Troy is at a piano recital date with Connor. Hopefully I can just skip this, and yeah. Oh geez, now they're in like a garden or something, and she asks a perfectly logical question. Couldn't you guys just make a dome somewhere else? And he says, no, Humpty Dumpty or something, and then they kiss. Skip. Geordi tells Picard that, yeah, our regular tractor beam would never work, but Hannah and I have a plan.
So, we added a little visor technology to the process and we're able to boost the effective force and, at the same time, lower the power conduit stress levels.
The modified beam isn't quite enough to do the trick, but if they shore up the biodome thing, the perfect people just might make it. Picard says, great, ask that Connor guy if this is cool with him, and we'll get started. Back to Troy already, and she's breaking up with Connor. His society would never accept her, and he says, well, we might have to evacuate, and you're pretty hot, so anything's possible.
Listen to yourself. A few days ago, you wouldn't even talk to us. This is my fault. I'm so sorry.
Hey, there's Hannah and Geordi with the good news, but they're going to need to send down engineering teams, like 50 people, to get it done, and they have 2 days. Ron Canada is not going to like that. But what choice do they have?
The Enterprise has moved to a parallel course with the core fragment. We must adjust its trajectory by a minimum of 1.2 degrees to ensure the colony's safety.
All right, it's time to try the new tractor beam, and there it is. Data sends impulse power to the tractor beam, and Geordi sends warp power to the tractor beam, and that's a lot. If this works, they could just easily go around moving planets if they want to, but that doesn't ever happen. Uh-oh, they're losing one of the emitters, and Worf says life support has failed on a bunch of decks, so they evacuate those. Another emitter blows, and they lose life support on 5 more decks, and all of these decks are in the saucer, so this is potentially hundreds of crew.
Termination of all life support in 5 seconds.
1.18.
Now, Miss LaForge.
Yes, sir. Shutting down all tractor emissions. Transferring power back to life support.
Hannah is all happy because they moved the core thing the 1.2 degrees they needed, and life support comes back. Hey, we still have 15 minutes left, so something's going to go wrong.
The stellar core fragment has passed safely out of the Moab system. The colony was shaken by powerful Temblors, but fortunately there were no injuries and only minor damage was reported.
Riker tells Connor that they're all packed up and ready to go, and he says, please tell Deanna I said goodbye, and Riker's like, yeah, sure, man. Uh-oh, there's been a breach in the biodome. I knew it. Hannah Montana says the tectonic shifts cracked the dome, and if they can't fix it, they need to evacuate in a few hours anyway. She's all like, wow, this sucks, after all we've been through, but Geordi is smart.
Why are you doing this?
What do you mean?
There's no breach.
What are you talking about? Look at it, it's right here. I measured the toxic leak, you saw me.
Hannah.
She's tricky, but Geordi isn't buying it. He's like, my visor would have detected a breach, you're full of crap. She says, well, I was designed to be this awesome scientist, and then you guys showed up, and holy mackerel, you have tech I couldn't even dream of.
How come we didn't invent any of these things? All of us on this colony have been living in the Dark Ages. It's like we're victims of a 200-year-old joke.
Apparently, Hannah has requested asylum aboard the Enterprise. Riker says, well, from what I've seen, she might not be the only one who wants out of the biodome. So they argue. Geordi and Worf are like, yeah, we have to give them asylum, and Troy says, no way, that would destroy their society. Then Bev chimes in and says, yeah, that's how genetically engineered societies work. So Picard wants to go to talk to Connor. But before we do that, Troy has to inform her captain that she's been hooking up with him.
Connor and I have had a relationship.
I see.
It should never have happened. I knew there was concern about outside influences, and I should have been more careful.
What is your status with him now?
She also tells him that they broke up. He asks if she wants to stay on board, and she says, no, I should go with you, but you need to know this. They keep talking about her feelings, so skip. Ron Canada is pissed at Hannah Montana and Captain Picard. He says, we should have never even talked to you guys, but it is pointed out that they'd all be dead in that case. Picard tells Connor, it's okay, man, you did what you had to do to protect your people, and he says, no, I'm selfish. I'm just as curious about what's out there as Hannah is. But again, they're still alive.
I have allowed this to happen.
We both allowed this to happen.
Picard, I was born to govern this colony, not to dismantle it.
If you force them to stay, you will be suppressing their human rights.
And what about the rights of those who want to stay in the biodome? Well, that's a good point. Connor wants Picard to just leave, but he says, I can't do that. If your people choose to leave, the Enterprise will not turn them away. So they have a town meeting with like 20 people. Connor is honest and says anyone can leave if they want to, but he urges them to stay. Hannah says it's too late to go back, our future is not here. And Connor says, well, give me 6 months and I can work this out.
What will that accomplish?
It's true that our presence here has had an unintended influence on your society. You should take adequate time to weigh carefully the consequences of what you're about to do.
Picard offers to come back in 6 months, but Hannah says, no way. Ron Canada is going to pressure us to stay the whole time. We don't want to be here. Connor says, okay, well then when you're ready to come back, we'll welcome you. Riker stops by the ready room and tells Picard there are 23 perfect people aboard. That's not so many. Picard is wrestling with the morals of all this and the prime directive, yada yada, but I'll say it again, that colony would have been destroyed anyway.
But in the end, we may have proved just as dangerous to that colony as any core fragment could ever have been.
Okay, it seems pretty cut and dry that, of course, the entire colony would have perished had the Enterprise not intervened, of course, but I'm not ignorant to the point that the perfect people's way of life was altered forever. And the question is it better to go on and survive like that or die with life as they knew it? And that's, a matter of opinion. There are several production notes about the disappointment of casting on this one. I'm going to assume they were referring to John Snyder as Aaron Connor. I think he played the part as written, so performance issues would be on the director. Or perhaps Mr. Snyder just didn't seem like a romantic match for Troy to some people. I don't know. The sci-fi part of this was a bunch of garbage. There is no way, no how that the Enterprise could move a star, albeit part of one, let alone a neutron star. And just where did this colony come from? It's never explained. They have been there for 8 generations, so assuming they reproduce like regular humans, that puts their origins well before Kirk and replicators and stuff like that. So how do they have grand pianos, let alone, a whole dome? I don't know. Most of the producers were not happy with this one, and there was a lot of time spent on the Connor-Troy romance, which is very boring. Even Ron Moore said this one made him want to go for a beer and come back later. I'm doing 2 deltas out of 5. You can let me know how you feel about that. If you like that video, thank you. Make a comment, like and subscribe if you want to. There's more Star Trek videos and related content on my website. Check it out at kellyplanet.com. I'm Eric Kelly. Live long and prosper.